All right, guys. I think we're live now. Let's see. How's YouTube? Do they hear us?
Yeah, we have a few hellos from Frank, Gio, Thomas. Oh, Amideo. Woohoo! Hey, guys. Today I'm not on all the cameras.
Can people hear us okay?
Yeah, you guys let us know if you can hear us correctly.
That'd be good.
Because in the last 5 minutes, we were struggling with getting sound from the crazy setup that Ryan installed. I'm actually going to take 2 seconds and take a photo of it because this looks absolutely insane. Bam. All right.
So what do we got? We got sound we can hear. Okay, that's great. So, so today, welcome. Welcome. Today is Boat Electrics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I hope you enjoyed the last few sessions, and this week we're excited. This week's session is a big one, so I'm going to start very high level, and we'll work our way down. And it could very well be that we have a lot of questions and we don't get through everything.
Should we start by doing a little housekeeping?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. So here's the deal. Today, Ryan has this incredible setup where we're going to switch between angles and cameras. It's going to be a little crazy. I am doing comments and questions. Ryan is doing a little bit of a presentation. So I think that for the first 10, 20 minutes, you're going to go through the presentation. Now and then, we're going to do little breaks to answer the questions that pop up. I'm going to gather all the questions on my side, and we're going to try to answer them as long as we have them. And yeah, we'll see how long we'll be talking about boat electrics today.
Yeah, I think it's actually good if we go through this, and if you have questions as we're going along, because I think in the little presentation I put together, there's some good spots to stop and talk about things. And then we were thinking about for the next live, because there could be a lot of questions in here, that if you guys have questions you didn't get answered or want me to go more in depth into certain areas or how we've done things on Polar Seal, then you can either put them in the chat, we'll pick them up, or you can email us and we'll put together a whole nother live on those topics and we can be more specific about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? So, what do you think, Soph?
I think that you want to get me out of the frame. That's it.
And there she goes. She's gone.
I knew it.
Okay, so let's dive into this here. So, put together this small presentation, and really what we're going to go through today is just overview of general boat electrics, sizing your system, which is a really big piece of the puzzle and answers a lot of questions if you just know how to size your system right. So that's one piece we're going to talk about. Maybe spend a little time and answer some questions. Talk about battery storage and options for those storage, and then some charging options, and then any Q&As after that. So really, if you were to talk to an old salty sailor, I think they would say that, oh, maybe they had a flashlight on board and some lights and maybe a refrigerator. But today's modern day boat electrics have really changed. And so as you can see on the photo there, we're doing very complex navigation systems, very complex, well, for people like Sophie and I who YouTube, we have a lot of requirements for power in terms of our camera setup, our computer setups, even some of our communication setups. Then you have your typical nav lights, and now boats are even getting into the all electric realm. On Polar Seal, our dinghy is actually electric, so we need to have a way to charge that. But now boats the size of Polar Seal are even becoming all electric, so their diesel motors are leaving, you're putting in electric motors. And then obviously the hair dryer, which always pops up.
Oh my God.
in our videos. So those are the things that are using it, and that's really what's changing modern day boat electrics, is all that stuff. So we need to have a way to put power into that. And the best way to do that is with the systems that you see on the right side of your screen. So these are all our charging systems, and these can be things from solar power, wind power, hydro, and then things that we use every day, like our motor and the alternator that's attached to that. And what we do is we take that energy that's being produced from those devices, and we have to have a way to store it, because typically those devices aren't putting out all the energy we need at once. and that's where the batteries is. And so the reason I'm showing you this, and you may say this is so silly, it's so basic, it's so high level, and it is, but I'm trying to get you to think about the system as a whole. It's when you're trying to think about your boat electrical system and what you need to think about the whole system, and that's all three parts of this diagram. So, oops, wrong button. That's really what the next piece is how do you size a system? I think probably one of the most common questions we get, Sophie, is how big should my battery bank be?
Yes, how many batteries should I buy?
How many batteries, how big should the battery bank be? And that's kind of like asking, even though I don't like this saying, how long is a piece of string? And it really depends on your needs. So the best way to do it is look at your requirements. So take a step back and look at your requirements and see how many amp hours or watt hours are you using in a 24-hour period. And then also looking at what kind of charging systems do you have available to you. That's the next thing. And then the last bit is to think about what are you actually using your boat for. So if you're a weekend sailor and you're just going out for maybe a night and then coming back and then you're plugging your boat into the shore power, that's going to lead you down one path. Versus if you're somebody like us who lives aboard our boat and we may be at anchor, well, during COVID, we were at anchor for 3 months and had no access to shore power. So these are two drastically different things. And that's these are the questions you need to answer when you're asking, how should I size my electrical system on board? Any questions on that?
Not so far.
No. Okay, well, there's going to be next. And I have to apologize for this next slide. Sophie and I are Mac. She's a Mac user. I'm a PC user, and on the PC version of PowerPoint, which I'm not operating right now, there's actually a magnifying glass, so I could blow this up, and that's what I was anticipating. But I'm using Sophie's Mac right now, and I can't blow it up. But what you can do if you want to follow along with this is, I think on our website.
It's not on yet. I'll put it after.
Okay.
But do you want to explain what this is?
I will, yeah, absolutely. So on our website after the live is going to be this Excel file, which I put together, and it all works and all the numbers will change automatically. But what it is, and if you can see my highlighter here, is the item categories, all the items on your boat that utilize power. And I've tried to put in some basic how many amps those items use. So that would be over an amp hour would be that times 1, or if it was running for 2 hours, it would be times 2, and that would create an amp hour. So these are all the different items, and this is particular to Polar Seal, but you can add lines, you can take away lines if you want, but this will give you a general idea. Then we have, under the blue headings up here, we have 2 different columns, and one of them is underway and one of them is at anchor. And the reason we do that is because for most boats, while you're operating underway, you're typically using a lot more power than when you're sitting on anchor, and that's to run things like your nav equipment, your autopilot, which for us takes a lot of energy, maybe different navigational lights. All of these things take a lot of power. So I like to break them down, underway and at anchor. So that's the little bit on the blue title bars up there.
So how much do we use?
Oh, hold on. I'll get to that in a second. Under that, we're going to break that down even more, and that's going to be underway during the day and underway at night, because all of these things will play into a factor, and that's the same with anchor too, underway and night. So while we're underway, total, so in a 24-hour period underway, we use around 440 amp hours.
Okay, so we had a tip from one of our viewers that says on Mac you can hit Command and plus to blow up the screen.
I don't think that's going to work, but we'll
It worked on mine.
Try, because did that work?
I don't think it did.
No, I don't think it did either. Sorry, guys. The problem is I'm displaying it through the presentation mode on Mac, so on the PowerPoint. So I'm sorry about that. So anyways, underway, we use 440 amp hours, which is a lot. And we need to have a way to replace that underway. Otherwise, a lot of our systems aren't going to run. Our autopilot's not going to run. refrigerators are going to shut off. So we need to replace a way to replace that. While we're at anchor, though, you'll see that we are only using 354 amp hours during a 24-hour period. So again, this is going to vary a little bit. So some days we may use a lot more than that because we're running our water maker maybe for 2 or 3 hours. If we're in the high latitudes, like if we're in Sweden, our refrigerators maybe aren't going to be running as much because it's not as warm outside. But down in the tropics, our refrigerators are running almost constantly. So you're going to need to think about that when you're filling out this form. So that's the best place to start, is how many amp hours am I using in a 24-hour period? So for us, we could say maybe we're using about 400, and that's kind of the average between when we're underway versus when we're just sitting at anchor. So that gives us an idea. Then the next bit is, what can we use to fill those batteries back up? So we know that we're taking that amount out. What can we use to fill it up? And down here in the bottom of this lovely Excel I made is our charging sources. So again, you can just plug in all the charging sources you have. On Polar Seal, we have today around 850 watts of solar power, and that's our primary charging source, I would say. So that's responsible for pumping in all the juice. And I think in here I have calculated that in a 24-hour period with the solar, we'd be putting in around 320 amp hours. So that gives you an idea. And then you can add in some additional, I made lines in here. We don't have wind power, but if you have wind power, we're going to talk about that in a bit. You can put that in there, hydro. But I also included non-renewable sources of power because we can use those. And that could be a generator or a alternator, which we've upgraded this year. So I included that and running that just like 20 minutes a day, because over a few day period, that's maybe what it would average out to if I ran it for an hour or two. And there we'd add maybe another 30 or 40 amp hours to it. So with that, in a 24-hour period, because of what our solar's producing and what I'm able to put in with the alternator, we're pretty much even. It's a good amount. And so we can put in what we're taking out when we're on anchor, and that's what it's telling me. So does that make sense?
It does make sense, but then I think we should come into the limitations of the charging options.
Yeah, we're going to do that too. So that's great. Any questions right now?
Because it's not as simple. Nope. No. But we have a comment, and Baron says that 440 amp hour is indeed a huge amount.
Yeah, when I first did the math on, that's a good comment, because when I first did the math on it, I was like, holy smokes, that is a lot of power. But when you think about it, it's in a 24-hour period. So if you're using 15 amps, if you're using 15 amps an hour, it adds up pretty quick in a 24-hour period. And that's really not unreasonable when you have a fridge and a freezer running, an autopilot working hard, and a bunch of nav equipment on. So yeah, it just adds up quick. So that's why I think, when we're underway, I get so picky about having lights on and not. So that's a good place to start with this sheet, is how much am I using in a 24-hour period and how much can I replace? So the next thing you need to know is, how big a battery bank should I have to meet the needs of my operation in a 24-hour period? So we know that we're using around 400 amp hours. And to be on the safe side, we know that sometimes we use quite a bit more than that. Sometimes we'll use a little bit less than that. So it's good to oversize your battery bank a bit. On Polar Seal, we have 680 amp hours of power available, or current available. And so as long as we're replacing that, we should be okay. Maybe some days we go down a little bit, some days we bring it back up, but that's what I would do. Now, that also depends on what type of batteries you have, but we'll get into that. So when asking yourself, this is a good place to start. This is a good chart to fill in and ask yourself.
We have a good comment / question.
Okay.
So Frank asked if it is better to think in watt per hour versus amp hour, because you can have different system, 12, 24, 48 volt.
This is a really good question. And I had debated about putting the sheet in watt hours, but I'm also cognizant of confusing people, but it still might. When I do most of my comparisons, I typically, this is a good one. When I do a lot of battery comparisons or when I'm trying to check the price of things, sorry, what?
No, nothing. Just
Okay.
go on.
I'll typically look at watt hours. So I'll examine watt hours versus price, and that is a good comparison. So if you're looking at like different types of batteries or different types of systems, that's how I'll do it. On most sailboats, so smaller sailboats, let's say less than 50 feet, most of the systems are going to be 12 volts. So I typically just leave it in amp hours because everything is 12 volts. If you're really interested in your AC draw, like what's being pulled through the inverter, you could do it all in watt hours because you can just change that over. So yeah, I think that's up to you, but in the end, it's going to give you the same answer that you're looking for. That was a long-winded. I'm really sorry about that.
All right. We also have a really good question. I think you should change the screen a little bit because you're very small now.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay. So we have a question from Yannick.
Okay. Oh,
Our Yannick.
Yannick.
Who asks,
Okay.
how do you reliably measure your amp hour? Are the battery load monitors good enough or better used as a separate tool and scans or monitor for 24 hours? That's a really good question.
It's a good question. So just to repeat, the question was, how do you measure the load on your system? Are battery monitors good enough? So there's two ways you can figure out the information you need for the sheet here. And the one is just to take the physical device. We could take, well, that won't work, but you could take your cell phone, and on the back of the cell phone is going to be some information on the power. On a charger, it will say the same thing, how much power it's going to use, the voltage and the amps. So you can just do it the long way and go pick up a Ray Marine manual and see how much your chart plotter uses, and then put that in, knowing that that's probably the maximum that it will use. But the other way to do it is exactly as Yannick asked, is I typically take our battery monitor, which is a Victron BMV 702. I use that, and sometimes I'll flip devices on and off and see what the drop in amperage is to figure out like what that load is on the system. Now, different people I talk to have different views on different battery monitors, which is something that we find in boating all the time. Everyone's got an opinion. So how good those are is kind of up to you to decide, and you'll learn more and more. I'm really happy with the one that we have. Victron did not pay me to say that. We've used it for a couple of years now, and I think it's really good. But there are other ones out there. So two ways to do it: check your device, or just use a battery monitor.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
No.
Good. So that's the first place to start there. So then the next bit is the battery question. I'm sure we're going to get a whole bunch of questions about this, but there's a bunch of different types of batteries out there, but typically we kind of put them into two groups, and one is the lead acid group, SLA, and then the other one is lithium, but there's a bunch of variations of them. The lead acid group, you can have just a flooded lead acid, and that's the kind where you have to put water into them, give it electrolyte fluid. Then there's sealed lead acid batteries like AGM and gel batteries. And then, well, my favorite, the lithium batteries. That's a whole different type of battery. And then you have some other ones that are on the market like carbon fiber, and then a few other random ones.
I had never heard about carbon fiber batteries.
Yeah, the carbon fiber, carbon foam, I think is how they also referred to. So there's many out there, and well, that's where we go. So I made a little chart here, a little table. I'm gonna have to take myself off the screen, but this kind of gives you a breakdown of the different types of batteries that are out there. Primarily what I had here is the lead acid batteries versus the lithium batteries. So you can see that the voltage is a little bit higher with lithium versus the others, and where that's good is if you have a lot of loads coming onto your system, it's going to maintain a bit more constant voltage. The next row there is cycle life. So that's another thing we can think about. So a lot of times people come to me and say, but Ryan, the lithium batteries are so expensive. But when you look at a chart like this, the lithium batteries also last a lot longer. Here we have 2,000 plus cycles. They can last anywhere from 5 to 6,000 cycles if you treat them well. Whereas lead acid batteries are really operating about 500 cycles. Weight's another factor for all these. Lead acid obviously has lead in it, so they're extremely heavy compared to the lithiums. The charging times are longer for the lead acid batteries versus the lithiums, and maintenance is a little bit higher, especially with the flooded lead acid batteries. So really what it comes down to with batteries is how much you can afford and how long you think it's going to be until you can afford to replace batteries, and that's going to guide you down the battery path. The battery path. But the other thing to think about, with batteries is going back to the sheet that we had. With a lead acid battery, you can't use the full amount of the battery. So really what is advised is you charge it up to about 80, 85%, and you use it down to about 50, maybe 45%. Any lower than that, you run the risk of destroying or trashing the battery. And that's just because of how those batteries are made, the chemical makeup and how they're constructed inside. So you can deeply discharge them, but you can only do that a few times before they really take a hit. So if I know through my calculations that I need about 400 or 500 amp hours during a 24-hour period to operate, but I'm also using a lead acid battery, I'm going to actually have to have maybe double that 400 or 500, so maybe 1,000 amp hours, or maybe more, like 2.5 times, just because I can only use a very small amount of those batteries. Lithium, on the other hand, we can use a much larger amount, so we can go all the way down to probably like 5% of the battery, so from 90 down to 5, and that then allows us to have a bit smaller battery bank on board. So if I'm requiring 500 amp hours, maybe I'll just have a little bit extra and have 600 amp hours on board, and that will cover me. So that's another thing to be thinking about when you're thinking what kind of battery should I put in and how big they should be. So there's all these things. It's a full system we have to think about. Anything on that?
Nope.
No questions. I hope I'm explaining it well. So that's the bit on the batteries. Do you have any questions, Sophie?
I don't, actually.
So back to this. So that's the piece on the battery. That's the storage piece of the battery. Next, we need to have a way to put energy back into those batteries. So charge those batteries up. And well, there's a few ways we can do that. We have renewable ways and non-renewable ways. We're going to talk about all these, but we'll first start talking about the renewable options, and start with wind. So I think on Polar Seal we had, on Polar Seal we had a wind generator when we first got her and no solar panels. What did you think of the wind generator, Sophie?
The wind generator was a pain in the butt that really didn't produce any valuable energy. It was
We lost the video.
It was sitting on top of our bedroom, and every night, sometimes at random times in the night, probably 3 a.m., 5 a.m., it would just start and make the entire boat and our bedroom vibrate, and we would wake up from it. And it really didn't produce anything.
So it was just like really noisy, and it was this thing that like spun above our heads. And yeah, I think we left it on for 2 years, then we took it off.
What kind of wind generator was it?
It was a Rutland 914, which is a very common one that you'll see out there.
And I think that the day before we left Stockholm for our big adventure, I put it out on the the equivalent of Craigslist in Sweden. It's called Blocket. And I put it out for about $100. And we had 20 people calling us who really wanted to buy this wind generator. And I could not understand for the life of me why you would want to buy it, because it was so useless and noisy.
Yeah.
But we know a lot of people that have different experiences with wind generators and that enjoy them.
Exactly. Yeah. So if we, what's going on here?
Oh, technology.
Uh-oh. Hold on. Stand by.
What's happening?
I don't know. There we go. Okay. So, so when we were talking about the wind generator and the noise that it creates, so one of the great things about wind generators is what I have in the pros here is that they operate 24/7. So unlike a lot of the other renewable paths that we have to go down, the wind generator can just blow all day and all night. And that's actually really great. So if you're at an anchorage and it's been cloudy for a week, you're still getting some power in. But a lot of the cons is what we just mentioned. There's moving parts, and that's one thing I hated about the wind generator and Polar Seal. This thing was like spinning above my head while we were sailing. They can be really noisy. We had a lot of vibrations in the boat from ours. Yeah. And they do require a significant amount of wind in order to produce an output that is noticeable. And that's the chart that I have here. So you can see here, this is off the Rutland 914, which is what we have, but these charts will all be pretty similar if you go online and find them. So you can see for this particular wind generator that with a speed of 10 knots, which would be like quite comfortable in an anchorage, you're only producing 27 watts. So at 12 volts, it's like 2 amp hours. So 2 amps in an hour. So over a 24-hour period, you would produce maybe about 40 or 50 amp hours of power. That is not enough to replace our 400 amp hours that we are using in a day. But as that wind goes up, so like 20 knots or 30 knots would be quite strong, and maybe we wouldn't be in that anchorage in the first place, that the wattage goes way up, so that curve kind of does the hockey stick, the famous hockey stick. So low winds are not really good, and that's where you want to be anchoring. Downwind sailing, for what a lot of us do anyways, the apparent wind generally is pretty low. So while you're sailing, you may not be getting a lot of power out of them either if you're going downwind, and even if the wind's strong. So that's something to think about there.
We have a couple of comments on wind generators.
Yeah.
Yannick says, I heard that wind is pretty effective in terms of charging your batteries. Amy Dio is saying maybe wind generator is more effective in long passages. Could be. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I think
on the topic of wind generators.
Yeah, no, like if the wind's blowing pretty good and it's pretty sustained, they're good over a long period, but just don't expect them to like be replacing everything in your battery bank. They're just not that efficient. But yeah, ours I think just produced way more noise than it did power.
Wasn't great.
No.
But we've met so many cruisers using them.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there are people out there absolutely loving them. It's just, well, I did not.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I'm a little hoarse here.
We have a couple of questions about batteries.
Okay, good.
So Aline asks us to talk about operating lithium batteries below 0 degree. And Tino wanted to know what about the fire safety in the batteries, which I think is a really good question.
That's a great question. Yeah, so we can take both those on the lithium side. So the first question is, what about the safety of lithium batteries? So all batteries are inherently dangerous. So we'll post a link, I think, at the bottom of this episode to the lithium battery video that we made a while back. But all batteries are inherently dangerous. So even lead acid batteries can swell, they can off gas, in some cases they can explode. Lithium batteries are the same, but they're a little bit more prevalent in our minds because we see the stories of the Samsung phones blowing up in people's pockets on airplanes. And what you need to understand is just like lead acid batteries, there's different chemistries to lithium batteries, and some are more dangerous than others. So the chemistries that you find inside of a car, for instance, or inside of a cell phone is a different chemistry than what you'd want to use on the boat. So in a car or in a cell phone, that's nickel, magnesium, cobalt, or a variation of that. So the reason they are used in these devices because they have a really high energy density. So for the space and the weight that they take, they can produce much more power than any other lithium battery chemistry that's out there. But that's changing actually. But we can come to that in a minute. Lithium iron phosphate, or LFP, is typically what you'll find in boat batteries, and that's what I would suggest you getting for your own boat. Sometimes you go onto the cruiser forums, or maybe you've had your own idea that I'll just go out and buy an old Nissan Leaf battery or a Tesla battery.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. A, they've been used, and there's a reason they're used. They're probably not a lot of performance left in them. And B, that chemistry is not what you want. The reason for that is the nickel, magnesium, cobalt can enter a thing called thermal runaway a little bit easier than lithium iron phosphate, which is what you find on boats. So when something enters thermal runaway, if you crash your car into a tree and there's a fire, when the battery cells inside the battery start decaying or they light on fire, they're doing their thing, they're off-gassing oxygen. And when the fire starts, they just start feeding it and it just starts running away. There's no good way to put out that fire. For lithium iron phosphate, it can still enter thermal runaway, but it happens at a very high, much higher temperature than what you'll find in nickel, magnesium, cobalt. So that's the safety bit of it. So yes, you still need to think about it. You still need to be smart about it, but using the right kind of chemistry, which is LFP, is the way to go. The other thing is, in all lithium batteries, you really should have a pretty fancy piece of equipment. It's just a circuit board called a battery management system. And what that does is it monitors all the cells to make sure that the voltage is not too high, and the voltage is not too low, and the temperatures are within a good range. So not typically above 50 degrees Celsius. If something happens, that BMS will shut down the cells and not allow current in or out of the battery. So if you're buying a battery, it doesn't have a BMS, that's a big safety feature that you need. Most of the batteries that I see for the boat market have them in them. If they don't, the manufacturer typically sells an external BMS, which you need to have to make the whole system run. And that's a good safety bit. And the rest of the safety piece for lithium batteries, we're going to maybe talk about at the end of this on how to put a system together or in another live. Depending on how long my voice holds out here.
Okay, we have a couple of comments/questions.
On that?
Yes.
Okay.
Emilio wanted to say that I've seen some building batteries for the boat so they're building batteries starting from Tesla car batteries. What is your opinion about this approach?
I would never do that personally. I just think it's the weight savings that you're getting from that is not worth the safety risk. But that's just my opinion. Obviously, if it's your boat, you can do what you want, but I would not do that.
Yeah. And Sayoli said that Sailing Dauntless installed Tesla batteries in their catamaran. Yeah,
again, not my thing. But speaking of batteries, this camera has batteries died.
Okay. I'll go fix that.
Yeah. The other question Sophie asked, or somebody asked, Sophie asked it to me, was lithium batteries at lower temperatures. And this is a great question. I think we all know that when the temperature gets cold outside, a car battery is a great example. The car sometimes has a really hard time starting when it's like minus 15 or something out. And that's an issue with lead acid batteries. It's less of an issue with lithium batteries. So you can run those batteries much colder, 0, minus 15, that's still okay. They may not hold as much charge, that the usefulness you're going to get out of them will be a little less, but it's not going to be as bad as lead acid batteries. There's a new type of lithium technology that's slowly making its way around, and that's LTO, lithium titanium, I think, something. LTO, I forget.
Oh, research, right?
I know,
Research.
and I used to know it off the top of my head. Those actually can last quite a long time at very low temperatures. So there's a bunch of new tech coming out, and maybe those won't be great for the boat for one reason or another. Yeah, so lithium, very good for cold weather. In fact, for the company I'm involved with, one of our biggest customers in the lithium, well, that we sell our batteries to, is the ice fishing market. So they love them, take them out to the little ice huts, and well, they work really well. Okay. Anything else there? I lost my comment person.
I don't know.
Okay. So we'll go back to the presentation here.
This is a two-man show, so we don't have a lot of production going on. So I'm doing a little bit of everything there.
Okay, so that's a bit on wind. Solar has been our big thing this year, and solar's great. And one thing that's really been awesome about solar is that over the last, probably the last 10 years, the price of solar just has like drastically been coming down and down and down. So, and with that, the efficiency of the cells has been going up and up and up. So the efficiency-wise, what you might get from a solar panel today was quite a bit less maybe 5 years ago. So that's great. So you just see on here some of the pros. They're silent. They can produce a significant amount of power, especially in the lower latitudes and on really good sunny days. So in the tropics, you get a lot of sun. They really can produce. And I think, what's the most we've seen out of our solar bank? So if you probably about 50, I think I've seen about 52 amp hours out of ours, and we had about 800 watts of solar on board. So really good, and that helps over a 6-hour period really top up those banks for all the power we're using. But some of the cons that we've experienced with it, well, obviously you can only operate them in daylight. They're pretty weather dependent. The first few days of us crossing the Atlantic, we really felt the effects of, it was cloudy for probably 3 days, and we really felt those effects. So we ended up having to run the engine for quite a while with that. They do need unshaded space, and we've noticed this a lot on the boat. There's so many shadows that get cast throughout the day that you need to be cognizant of it. One thing that's great in the tropics that we've noticed as opposed to the Med is that because the boats are all pointed the same way generally all the time, which is to the east, you can just move your boom off to the port side and get pretty much a shadow-free solar day all throughout the day. So if you have anything covered from the boom, you just push it off to the side and bam, but you do have to think about it. Now, if you're in a place where the wind's always shifting, then you're constantly up there moving panels around because it does matter. And then the last bit is the cells are really sensitive. So there's a lot of different types of solar panels but you have the hard ones and the soft ones, the walk-on ones. And Sophie and I learned the hard way that the walk-on ones, no matter how tough they are, they can still break. The cells inside can break, and then either the energy output goes way down or they just are completely useless.
Yep. So, Stylist asked us a little earlier, what was the installation error with the flexible solar panel on deck on that topic?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we one of our very first videos we put out was on solar panel installation that we did with a company called Sunbeam Systems. We bought the panels and put them on, and they were really tough panels. They're called Tough Plus, I think.
Tough Plus.
And we put quite a bit of them on, and I think just before we left on our trip, I dropped a screwdriver from the top of the mast, and it bounced off one of those panels, and it didn't do anything to the panel itself. I was really impressed. But where we went wrong, so probably about a year after we installed it, I noticed that the energy output had gone way down. And I was pretty disappointed with that. I contacted Sunbeam Systems, and this is our chance to redeem ourselves a little bit here. We were disappointed in the panel, but the service that we got from them was like beyond what I could have ever imagined. And they actually came to our boat in the south of Spain and looked at the panels to try to figure out what was wrong. But all those solar cells in any panel, and that could be a hard panel or that could be a soft like walk-on panel, those cells are all really fragile. So when we installed the panels, we had the power lines. They were flat, but they still have a little bit of a ridge on them. We had them running over underneath a number of the panels, so to kind of hide the installation wires, we had them running underneath there, and that then causes the panel just to bend a little bit. Further to that, we'd use some 3M tape underneath it to stick the things down. Came with the panels. Don't ever use that 3M tape. But that also caused some ridges in it. So when we would walk on the panels, over time it was just enough flexing that it broke the cells inside. So we had to rip off those panels with that 3M tape. That was one of the worst jobs we've ever done on the boat.
It was terrible.
But we did know we never had to worry about those panels flying off. So that was the mistake we made. And so we've actually put a few more. We haven't completely covered our boat in them again like we had before, but just in one section of the boat. And we didn't use the 3M tape. We used Sikaflex, and we kind of made those ridges like a little bit less sharp, more smooth them out with some silicone and some Sikaflex and stuff.
We had a really good comment from Vince who says, "They are very sensitive. I shouted at mine and it refused to work. I had to buy some chocolate. That helped."
At the solar panels.
Yes.
That's good. Yeah, that's I hear you on the shouting. I had to do a lot of that today.
Okay. We get a few questions.
Okay.
Some are about batteries. Some are about hydrogenerator and wind generator. What do you want to say? Should we continue on the topic of batteries? Because
since we did that, and that all interrelates, so I think it's good. Yeah.
And then there are some questions about arches.
Okay, perfect.
We're also going to take.
That's
okay.
Great.
So, Travis asked, what are the things to look for when you buy lithium batteries? And I think that's a really good question. So, for example, quality and stuff. I think that's a good one.
Yeah. So that is a great question. What to look for? And there's so much on the market, and there's so many people. A lot of people typically just look at price. And to be very honest, for most applications, price is probably one of the biggest drivers. But there are some really interesting lithium batteries out there. So if safety is like your primo number one concern and you want top of the line system, there's some batteries out there that have the ability to run a charge bus and a discharge bus. So everything that is using power from the lithium batteries has a specific bus that it will use. So if something happens on that side and the voltage spikes or goes way down, the lithium battery, the BMS inside, and the whole system can just shut down the discharge side while the charge side is remaining, or vice versa, it can flip. Those are extremely complicated, very technical batteries. I think they're really cool, but they're very expensive. So that's one. The other side of the spectrum is a very cheap China battery that you buy that has no BMS inside or a very basic BMS inside. So my best advice when looking for a lithium battery is find one that is within your price range, but also from a company that provides good warranty and some good support, because you might have questions installing it and deciding if this is safe for me to do, if doing it this way is safe for me to do, and you just want to have a person to call. Of course, well, I'm always around, but I can't answer everyone's questions. So that's one of the big things I would look for is the company that you're buying them from. If you buy them from Alibaba online in China, you may never get them. And if you do, you're not going to have anyone to call for support. So that's probably my biggest thing, good warranty and the support.
I think that this is the time for you to do a little bit of a shameless plug. Oh, come on, you should.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm obviously associated with a company that I started well before we started sailing called Dakota Lithium. I think we have great batteries. We've had them on our boat now for a year and a half. We've gone all over the Med, across the Atlantic with them. And yeah, I think we even have a promo code we can use for some percentage off.
If you guys want to buy batteries and you want maybe a cheaper option, drop us an email and we'll send you a discount code for Dakota Lithium batteries.
Absolutely. No, they're really good, and I think the company's great, but that's I'm a bit biased there.
Amy Dio says, buy Dakota Lithium.
Yeah, no, I think they're great. There are people out there that do buy their own cells. You can buy Winston Cells is a company out there in China. You can buy the cells from, bring the cells in. You can arrange them how you want, make it big or small. But you need to have an idea of what you're doing when you do that, because that could really be a safety. There's some safety concerns when doing that. So that's another option. But that's the thing I look for. Look for the price and the company that you're doing business with, and check the reviews and stuff. So
yes, so we are actually having some questions about the cost. Thomas Seglaren asked, is the price of lithium on the way down? And Vince wanted to know about the costs.
Yeah.
So how much does a lithium battery cost?
That's good. That's a great question. So the cost of lithium batteries is dropping every single day. So when we get stuff from our suppliers, every time we order, the price is going down and down and down. So you would expect to see that in the prices that you see online. So that's great. Now, what the actual cost I usually do it on cost per watt hour, but I haven't done the calculation in a while, so I don't actually know what that is. But you expect to pay for maybe a 100 amp hour battery right now, 100 amp hour 12 volt battery, maybe in the neighborhood of $700, $800, I think. Obviously, the bigger you go, the more expensive. Sometimes you'll see them online for extremely cheap. Just be a bit wary of that, because there's typically some other issue with it, or maybe you need to pay shipping. So yeah, that's the best I can say on cost.
All right. We had two questions about batteries. One of them is, are lithium batteries vulnerable to salt environment? After my little laptop crash. And by the way, guys, thank you so much to all of you who helped me replacing it. Yeah, I have a new one, and now I have my life back, it feels.
This is a computer.
This is my computer.
Yeah.
And Ed wanted to know how we secured our batteries in Curacao when we left the boat for hurricane season in order to protect them from being damaged.
Yeah,
these are really good questions.
Yeah, these are great questions. So the first one,
because you're kind of making this talk here.
No, it's great. That's what I wanted, actually, because no one wants to just listen to me lecture. I don't want to do that either. Saltwater environment, no, it's fine. Most boats have a secure battery box. And so if they're just in there, it's no different than having a lead acid battery in there. You do want to check the terminals every now and then, just to make sure there's no corrosion happening on top. And there's some gels you can put on to kind of protect those terminals. But that's about it. What you don't want to do is submerge the battery into salt water, which for obvious reasons is bad. So we actually experienced that with one of our GoPros. I didn't realize one of the doors was shut, and well, it didn't end well. So the battery swelled, and there's this apple smell that comes from the lithium batteries when they have a problem, like a sweet apple smell. But generally, no, they're fine. You can have them in the environment, the salty air. Just keep the terminals clean, and it's okay. The second question was, how did we secure our batteries for when we left the boat, extended time period? And that's
I think that we could even extend that question. How should you secure your batteries when you leave your boat for winter or for hurricane season for a longer period of time? And I think that you could even extend it more to, how do you secure those batteries if they're lead acid versus lithium batteries?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. And that's one of the benefits of lithium, is that with lead acid, you do need to make sure, I think as a lot of you know that own boats, in the wintertime, maybe you take the batteries off and you put them on a trickle charger, because maybe over a month or two, that the charge inside the battery just kind of keeps going down and down and down. And eventually you get down below that 40% that we talked about, and you start damaging the battery. So you can literally come back over winter and batteries are destroyed. Lithium does not operate that way. So you could leave a lithium battery disconnected inside your boat for a year, and maybe it will lose like 5% of its charge. So that's one of the great things about lithium. You can just leave them there. what we did, because it's connected to the system, and we have little items here and there that are constantly drawing, some monitors and some alarms and things that are constantly drawing power. And since we don't know when we're going to go back to the boat, I decided just to completely disconnect the batteries. But what I did do is so I disconnected the batteries from anything drawing a current and anything putting a current into the batteries, but I left them all wired in parallel together. The reason for that is, if for some reason I disconnected them all and just let them sit individually while we were gone, and let's say something happens to one of those batteries, when we're away, I get back and the charge in battery number 3 is way down, and I don't go and voltage test all of those beforehand, and then connect all those batteries back up in parallel. When we wire them all back up, I can actually there's going to be a ton of current if the voltage is low just flying into that battery, and we could cause a fire then, or just blow up that battery. So I left them all together so they would just kind of keep self-balancing themselves while we were gone. And that's really all you have to do. Just let them sit there, and that's it. And that's really what you should do, I think.
Are we good on the topic of maintenance of batteries
absolutely.
When you're out? All right. We have a question that we need to address here. Have you heard about the Firefly Oasis carbon foam?
Yeah. We had it on the list. I think I could put carbon fiber, but it should have been foam.
Oh, I see.
I think I mentioned foam. Yeah, I have. I don't know a lot about them. They're kind of another type of like sealed lead acid battery, but they have some different stuff inside, and I don't know enough to speak intelligently about them, so I'm just going to defer that. I do know some people have been putting them in their boats because they're a bit cheaper option than going lithium, but they still don't have all the benefits of lithium, so you can do your own research on that. Maybe I'll dive into that a little bit more, but yeah.
Okay, yeah, Firefly produces carbon foam. Sailing Sulianis uses them so they have more space in mind of vlog viewers than otherwise, yeah. And then some random dude under the pseudonym of 59 North Sailing thinks that it's cool, and they have a different chemistry. Yeah.
They do, yeah.
Random dude.
You said there were some other questions.
Yeah, we have lots of questions, but I think that we don't have so many more of those. Oh, yeah. Should the lithium be left on storage charged, not fully charged? So should you charge them 100% before you leave them? Or
yeah, that's a good question. And I'm not a battery engineer, so I actually asked the battery engineers about this, and they suggested to leave in about 80 to 90%. And why that is, I did not get an answer. That happens a lot of times with some of these battery engineers. So I had suggested topping them all the way up, but 80 to 90%, they said. So that's kind of where we left them, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. Most lithium batteries, just so you know, when they're being shipped, so when you receive a lithium battery, they will be shipped at like 30%, and that's due to shipping regulations. So just when you get a battery, there will be some charge in them, but it's 30%. And it's important to make sure that you check that and know that, so you're not connecting a fully charged battery maybe with a 30% charged battery.
All right. Any thoughts on Victron batteries? Someone's building a van, and he believes that that's what he's gonna go for. It's a good question. Are we talking about lithium batteries? Or,
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Or I think that I love Victron. I think they make really cool stuff. In fact, we've become the Dakota Lithium has become a reseller or distributor of Victron kit. Not including their batteries. I think their batteries are a little bit expensive, personally, but they do have when they design those batteries, they designed them in a full system in mind. So there's some really good things about it, but they are a bit expensive, a little bit more expensive on the market. So I think they're fine. They're really good. I would put them in a list of things to consider, and then you just got to look at the price and if it's what you can afford. We have good friends that have Victron lithiums on board, and they have really good things to say about them.
Who's that?
Scott and Mia.
That's right.
On Tenga.
That's right. The ML54 that we made a video about. Cool. And then Jordan wanted to know our opinion about the chance of a BMS failing with lithium.
Yeah, that's a good question. Because the BMS is like the thing that's protecting you, and that is one of the problems with drop-in batteries. And I hate that term because there's no such thing as a drop-in lithium battery. But you will not know if that BMS fails. So I can't tell you today if the BMS inside is working correctly or not, and you just have to assume it does. I don't know about our manufacturer if the fail-safe is just off if that BMS fails. I need to check that. But other external BMSs you would know. The only external BMS that I know that it exists is the Victron one. So you would actually see physically that it has failed. Other than that, there are batteries with BMSs inside that communicate over Bluetooth or over CAN bus protocol, and those you'd be able to tell. But even if the thing has failed, there's not much you can do about that. You just know that that BMS has failed because it's sealed inside the battery, and you aren't going to want to remove the top of that battery to change the BMS. So that's where the company that you bought the batteries with is so important. Because if they have a good warranty, they'll take care of that. By law, international law, you're not allowed to ship defective lithium batteries back to a manufacturer. So most battery places will have a disposal.
By law, where?
It's transport law. Like
Okay.
UN transport law does not allow you to ship defective lithium batteries. So don't do that. So you probably just get a new one, but that's why it's so important. So it just depends on what type of battery you have and how it's there.
Okay, we have an excellent question from Eric, and I actually don't believe you will have the answer to that, but do you know the disposal cost of a lithium battery?
I do know that.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
Oh, wow. I mean,
so a person, well, this is at least the case in Europe. And I don't know about the US, but in Europe, battery manufacturers that sell on the market there are required to pay a fee for every battery that is sold on the market. And that it's not just batteries, it's everything from like electronic devices to, things that are hard to recycle. So when Dakota Lithium sells a battery in Europe, we pay a fee to an organization in each country. And then that fee goes to disposing of lithium batteries. So now what happens is if you want to get rid of a battery, all you need to do is take it to a place that sells batteries, and they're required to take those batteries and then they send them to the disposal sites. So for you, I guess in a roundabout way, it's just kind of baked into the price of the battery, at least in Europe. But the manufacturer typically pays a fee for every one that's sold. I don't know how that works in the US, but in Europe, that's how it works. So you should be able just to take them to a place, drop them off, any place that sells batteries, and they'll take care of it for you.
Mm-hmm. Unrelated, but what can be done to mitigate damage to both electronics by lightning strike?
Oh man, can we hold that question?
All right, we're holding that question.
Okay.
So a BMS failure isn't going to shut down the battery bank?
I think that depends on the manufacturer, and I need to go back and check on what our fail-safe is. I think for a lot of batteries that if the BMS fails, you won't be able to charge or discharge the battery, but I don't want to say yes or no to that. So let me check, and then we'll post something on the bottom of the video for the answer for that. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's go back into some more of these things, because I know that somebody had put in a hydro question, and that's the next slide that I have.
Okay, we have some question about solar panels and arches.
Oh, okay, maybe we do that first, because we're on solar panels right now.
Yes, solar panels and arches are also topics that engage.
Okay.
So a big theme is MPPTs, controllers for panels. How do you set that up so that it's optimal? So Yannick wanted to know if MPPT controller for each panel independently, or for example, like one place on the boat.
Right, that's a great question.
How do you optimize the use of controllers?
Yeah, so That's a good question from Yannick, and it's really important to remember that every charge device, so that can be a wind generator, a solar panel, a hydrogenerator, even just a normal generator, an alternator, needs to have some type of regulator between it and the batteries to control the current going to the batteries. So you could think of this as a battery charger. Okay, so for solar panels, there's two types, a PWM and an MPPT, and the MPPT is the most common one. And really what these are, an MPPT, is they're just really fancy battery-to-battery chargers. So what they do is the voltage on the solar panels needs to be higher than the voltage of the batteries, otherwise it's not going to charge. So our solar panels, I think the max solar output is like 26 volts. Some can go as high as 32. And depending on how you wire them, you may wire them in series and the voltage could be 150 volts. What that MPPT will do is take that voltage and step it down. So it's gathering in all the energy coming in. It will step it down to the voltage of your battery bank, but it also acts as a battery charger. So it might have a different charge profile. You can program in 3-step charging for lead acid batteries or for lithium batteries. So you have a lot of control within an MPPT. MPPTs are also generally known to be a bit more efficient than PWM. So PWM chargers are a bit cheaper than MPPT chargers. MPPT are a bit more efficient. But the question Yannick is asking is, how many should I have? So and this could be like a whole video probably in itself. But some people like to just put everything together in parallel or in series and have it just running into one MPPT. Others say that you should have one MPPT for each solar panel that you have. What I tend to do is, what we've done on Polar Seal is our big solar panels that we have on the back of the arch. We have one MPPT for each of those, and that's because, we have one on the port side and one on the starboard side. My thinking behind that is because if there's shading on one of the panels, but the other panel is completely bright, one panel won't be impacting the other panel. So if they're on the same system, on the same MPPT, that little bit of shading is going to affect the whole thing. And if I have separate MPPTs, that won't be the case. We also have that the same with our flexible panels on the deck. We have separate MPPTs for those based on the starboard side or the port side. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that if you do run solar panels into the same MPPT, especially in parallel, they need to be either the exact same panel, the same voltage, or you need to run them in series. Otherwise, you're going to cause some problems along the way. But that's my recommendation. I tend to like to have the boat kind of divided in half and have MPPT on one side and one on the other. I think on Polar Seal we have 4 MPPTs right now. So I hope that answers the question for Yannick. Mm-hmm. But it's a very complex answer. So to answer it shortly, that's the best I can do. Okay,
so Michael asked if we have each of our panel isolated, so that if that panel is shaded, it doesn't affect the other panel.
That's exactly what I was just saying. And for the most part, that's true. There's a few exceptions on our deck panels because I didn't want to buy 10 MPPTs, but generally, yes, we do that just to try to get the most efficient solar current out of batteries that we can.
Yep.
Yeah.
Somebody said that he heard that putting a honeycomb panel under the flexible solar panel keeps them cooler and it produces more solar.
That's I know a guy who commented earlier that has done that very same thing on one of his boats.
Oh yeah, that's right.
That's a good point about solar. If you don't have a lot of experience with it, the solar panels can get really hot. And that heat, as we talked about in a few videos, anytime you have a lot of heat, that reduces the efficiency of whatever you're working with. So with our big solar panels are up on a big arch, and they get a lot of good airflow, and that keeps the heat down. But when you have a deck panel on, there's no airflow underneath it. So one thing you can do is put, I guess it's like corrugated plastic or like a honeycomb type thing underneath it, attach both sides. I have not tried that. I've seen it done. As long as that piece of plastic is very rigid and hard, I think it's okay. But you still may want to avoid stepping a lot on those panels because it still might flex. And the more they flex, the more those cells would have the tendency to break and crack. And then obviously the panel will become less efficient or even destroyed. So that is something to consider, is the heat underneath. But if it's a small, like 30-watt panel on the deck, I mean, the heat, it's maybe not so high. So, yeah. Anything else?
Actually, that's it. If you guys have more questions on the topic of a solar panel, drop them in. I am compiling everything, and I will try to just shoot them at the appropriate time.
Did you say there was a question about an arch?
No, that was it actually.
Oh, okay, cool.
Arch is really good.
Yeah.
Somebody said the best thing is a combo of a solar arch and davits, which we have.
It is
and
good.
I agree with that
It
statement.
Is good, yeah. But not really electric related. So we talked a little bit about solar and wind. The last thing on the renewable side, so there's really three options on your boat: solar, wind, and hydro. And hydro is really just wind power, but it's in the water. And one of the benefits of this is that you don't have to worry about the wind speed, and you don't have to worry about the noise so much because they're a bit more quiet than what you'll find on a normal wind generator. So over our Atlantic crossing, I was really wishing that we had one of these because we were sailing along at a pretty good clip, but we had no, it was just cloudy all day, so we were getting no solar in, but we were still burning a bunch of electric.
And we were going fast.
Yeah, we were going fast, and this thing would have been great. So, but that is one of the downsides. They'll only work underway, so unless you're sailing, it's not going to work. It does require a pretty decent boat speed in order to be efficient. I'm going to show you that. And it does increase the drag of the boat a little bit. So this is a chart. This is from, if I could just go back for a second, this is the photo there, which is a little hard to see because it's white, is watt and C. And this chart that I'm showing next is from the Watt and C website. So you can see, if you take one of these and put it in the water, they have different props on them that are different sizes. That if your boat's only going like 4 knots, you're going to be producing a pretty small amount of wattage for the boat. Now, we would have taken that crossing the Atlantic. That would have been great. But it's not till you get up to about the 5, 6, 7 knot range that it really picks up. In a larger boat like 59 North's Ice Bear, when that boat goes 9 knots and 9 knots of wind, you can see that all of a sudden that hydro vane, the wind watt and C, might be producing close to 500 watts, and that's like essentially our solar array that's on the back of our boat. So that's one thing I really think is cool with these. Now, Watt and C even makes one that is a pod that that attaches to the underneath of the boat, so you don't even have to pick it up and put it down anymore. It's just like permanently there, which kind of seems cool to me. Yeah, this is one of the really cool things. We do see them on boats. There are different types of them out there, but they are a bit expensive. Yeah.
Eric asked, would you prefer a hydro generator over a wind generator? I think that we can safely say that we would prefer a hydro generator, period.
Over a wind generator.
But just having one, we would prefer that.
No, we'll definitely not be putting our wind generator on. But the hydro vane, I would definitely do.
The hydro generator.
Hydro generator, what did I say?
Hydro vane is not the same thing.
I've been talking. Oh, that's right.
How's your brain, Ryan? Oh. Doing good.
I've been fried.
Hanging in there.
You guys, just a tech talk note. I love tech so much. So I'm trying to make these lives much more high end, high quality. So we've been testing out some green screen things for some ideas that I have. And I've spent 6 hours today working on this setup, and there was one piece of it I couldn't get to work, and it worked earlier this week.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty frustrated by that. But we have some big plans for these.
Yeah, people have actually been praising the quality
Oh, yeah?
of this.
Well,
slide.
we had more. We were going to actually have the questions come up on the screen, and well, there's a whole bunch of stuff, but it failed.
Next time.
So my brain's a bit frazzled. So yeah, next time it's going to be even better next time. But okay, was there another question?
You're good.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. So that's where you're going to experience the hydro generator. Now, so those are kind of the three options that you're gonna see in terms of charging on a boat in terms of renewables. There's not much else. The rest are really non-renewables or fossil fuel type options that you have. And I need to take myself off the screen here. And really, we have our alternators, which most of us have on the boat, a generator, which might be installed on the boat or not, shore power, and then there's even some fuel cells out there. The one that I have in the picture is, I can't remember the name of the company right now. We actually looked at these a while back, and they looked like kind of a cool idea, but then I discovered that one of those bottles that you see just atop of my head in the screen there only lasts for about 8 hours, and they're really flammable. So I elected not to put that on board. What we have done on Polar Seal is actually gone the route of the generator, but in the form of a high performance alternator. And I'm pretty excited because hopefully in the next couple weeks or week or so, we're going to have a video coming out with our upgrade on Polar Seal of our high performance alternator. Mm-hmm. So that'll be fun, but that's our other way. So when those renewables aren't working, we need to have a source to come back on, and generally all of those non-renewables are coming from fossil fuels. So either diesel, petrol, or coal, nuclear if you're plugging into the shore power. So that's it. Anything there?
Someone commented that he would really think that the hydrogenerator really adds value on long passages or crossings, and I totally agree with that.
Yeah, I think so too. If you're out for quite a while, if one of your goals on your boat, and remember we talked about this being a system, is if in your system, if what you're trying to accomplish is doing long offshore sailing, that hydrogenerator is probably a good thing for you to have. If you're just somebody that's going to do coastal short day hops, that tool is maybe not the best tool for you. And maybe it is the solar panels, or finding more room for the solar panels, or maybe just having a small petrol generator that you can plug in, or maybe you don't even need that and it's just a shore power. So long offshore passages I think would be great for that.
All right. Andrew is opening the Pandora box.
Uh-oh. I don't know what that
so
means.
I think that we would really have enjoyed having the hydrogenerator, particularly on the Atlantic crossing when we had so much shading over the solar panels, and the autopilot was drawing a lot of energy because it was super shaky. So Andrew asked, because of your power draw with your autopilot on your Atlantic crossing, why did you not have
hydrogenerator?
No, a wind vane.
Oh yeah. Man.
We've had this question.
Yeah, wind vane.
We just don't like wind vane is the short answer. Not on this boat. We don't have the space to install it, and it's expensive. We didn't have the budget for it. I'm sure that on certain boats it makes sense to have a wind vane. For us, it did not. Just the same way that it did not make sense for us to invest in a hydrogenerator because they're very expensive, and we don't know how many crossings we will be doing on our current boat. So
I think,
but we're getting off topic.
No, but I think it's a good question, because what you're trying to get rid of, anytime you go offshore, you want to make sure you have redundancy in certain systems that matter to you. So for us, the autopilot was a big thing. Because it was just the two of us. Now, if you're on a boat with a crew of 10, the autopilot doesn't matter because you can always have somebody at the helm. So for us, it was either trust our electrical system and have a backup autopilot, which is what we did, or we can have one which is electrical and one which is mechanical, which would be the hydrovane. Now, for us, that came with some downsides. It was really expensive. It took up a lot of room on the transom. And we felt that with just the backup auto system, we had autopilot system, we had enough trust in our electrical system that was redundant enough for us. And if it did really all go to crap, that Sophie and I would just have to suck it up and hand steer the rest of the way. So yeah, I think it's to each their own on that one and evaluating your own risk. That's how I evaluated it. And that for us was a critical system. So, but that we just didn't go for it because of the expense and the installation, how that was installed. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Anything else there?
No, you're good. You can continue.
Okay.
We have a few questions, but some of them are a little bit off topic, and I think that we can just take them at the end because I can't fit them in a box, but we'll take them.
Oh, maybe we should do that now. One thing I'm going to pull up here is, I got to go to my next slide. This is a chart, and I'm hoping to, if we have more questions, this is actually how it's not fully complete yet. I think I can even pull my, oh no. It's not fully complete yet, but this is the schematic of how Polar Seal is wired today. So there's a little bit of change versus how we did our first lithium installation video. And I want to talk about this more. I don't know if we have enough time today, but this might give good, because what I've done here is just gone over the whole system and the charging options and the storage options. So
oh my God, what is this?
That's my schematic.
That's your schematic.
Yeah.
Oof. Guys, are you okay? Are you comfortable with having this schematic on the screen? Because it looks very scary to me.
So this might be a good time to ask some of those random questions here.
All right. How about we change the screen to something a little more?
Yeah, I turned it.
Viewer friendly. Just change back to us. Hi guys. Yes, all right, so we're going to go back a few topics earlier, but Sailing Ukiyo wanted to know, with your knowledge of energy, do you foresee hydrogenerator or other hydrogen or other fuel cell applications entering the sailing market for all-around power application?
No, I don't see, so I personally don't see hydrogen or like fuel cell applications going, because you still have to find a place to... Where are you going to get the hydrogen from? So that's going to be a problem. There's no infrastructure there for a sailor to get hydrogen to put onto the boat like there is diesel. What I do think is going to happen is the technology for the batteries is just going to get better and better and better. And I think we're on the cusp of this right now. So electric boats almost work, but not quite. So for a few of us that are brave enough to go out there, we experience it with our dinghy. We, for financial reasons, haven't tried it with our big boat yet, but we experience with our dinghy. There's just some limitations that if we just had a little bit better battery storage, a little bit more energy density, and a little bit better way to charge them, it would be way, way better than traditional motors. So I think where it's going to go is going to be electric, and it's going to be much better storage options on boats. So the lithium batteries, and it may be LFP, which there's a lot of work going on to make those more efficient and have higher energy density. It may be some other type of lithium technology. So I think it's going to go there. And the solar is going to get better. So the output from those, the efficiency output is going to be better. And every year it gets better. So yes, that's where I think it's going to go.
So bottom line is that next year we can all dry our hair with a hairdryer.
Yeah, I don't know. Sailboats. Well, you might be able to do that. You can do that today, but you may not be able to put a electric motor in and fully rely on it. But part of that too, I think part of that too, which is worth noting, is our own lifestyle choices. So I'm very engine happy, so an electric motor right now maybe isn't the best option for me. But if you're somebody that sails, I know Sailing Uma has electric motor in their boat. but they love to sail, so they only use it every once in a while coming in and out of harbor. Then that's great for them. So if you really want to just say, okay, we're just going to sail, we're only going to use the motor when we have to, good option for you now. It's part of a lifestyle choice, I think, also.
Talking about lifestyle choices, sailing prepper, can we take a moment to appreciate that pseudonym? It's really good. What would be a good lithium solar match for a startup on a 33-foot sailboat?
Say that question again. A
lithium solar match, and the boat is 33 foot.
Yeah, so again, I think this depends on...
Do you want to run a hairdryer or not?
Yeah, do you want to run a hairdryer? You really got to fill out that... You got to do the exercise on how much power you're going to use. If you're just going to use a basic nav system, autopilot, and charge your phone once in a while...
A fridge.
Yeah, maybe a fridge.
Fridges are good.
Yeah, you maybe, I don't know, 300-400 amp hours, and then solar that can fill that up. It also depends on what you can fit on your boat too. I mean, all the boats are different in terms of the battery bank areas you can get in, and same with solar or wind, where can you actually mount something? So that's a really hard question to answer, but it's going to be around that range, maybe 300 or 400 watts of some type of renewable, and maybe 300 or 400 amp hours of a battery, I would imagine. But if you're really intensive, so we know people on 33-foot boats that could have just as much of equipment as we do, then you're going to need to get creative and make that bank bigger and the charging systems bigger.
Vin said, I only have a 23-foot boat. My schematic is a lot smaller.
Yeah, our schematics are pretty detailed, especially with the addition of our new alternator, because that was quite a complex system, and it was complex in a way that we had made to protect our lithium batteries, because the alternator connected to the lithium batteries presents some challenges. We can go into that now, or we can wait, because that could be a whole session in itself. But that's one of the reasons there's wires everywhere in that schematic.
Random question. Ryan, have you heard of liquid salt batteries?
I've not heard of liquid salt batteries.
Liquid salt batteries. I had never heard about that either. I think
this is a good point to make, though. A lot of times we see online that... You're going to read a CNN article. This is my favorite example, is that Fiskars has produced a battery that can be charged in 30 seconds and can last, 1,000 miles for a car, let's say. You see these a lot. And the thing you have to remember when you read these articles is these are all done in lab scale. So lab size, they're like little coin cells. And what these scientists do is they're in there and they're playing with different chemistries, and they put them in these coin cells and they test them. And then they take that data and they extrapolate it, and they're like, oh, well, based on these results, this is what this type of technology has the potential of doing. It's very, very hard to get those coin cells into a battery that is able to be sold to a customer and not have that customer destroy their boat, or themselves. So be really, like, if you're reading about new technologies coming out, just take that into account. It could take 20 years for a coin cell test to get all the way to production level and get out into the market. So a good example of this is lithium iron phosphate, or LFP, has been around really for 25 years, and it's been like 5 years that it's really gotten known on the boat market. So it took that long from it to go from those button cells all the way to when we're using them now. So just keep that in mind when you start hearing about all these technologies out there. Yeah?
We have more random questions, but
go for
I
it.
think people also want to see the schematics. I think that we have a couple of nerds in the audience.
Yeah, so what I can do is just we can pull that up and I can walk through the schematic a little bit. It's, again, there's a few lines missing, and it's not because I can't zoom in on it on this, but I think you can see my red pointer, and you can see at the top on the solar section, you can see how I have the solar arrays. So the big solar panels I have connected to their own MPPTs. And then on the smaller walk-on arrays, they, depending on which side of the boat they're on, they're connected to their own. Then all of those feed in, and they go through circuit breakers so we can shut them off. And then they flow into the bus bars, either the positive bus or the negative bus for the boat. So that's pretty easy. Then, because all of our kit on board is Victron, we have the ability to take all of those MPPTs and run them into a central unit. And Victron has a line of devices called the GX device. They have 3 of them: a color controlled, a Victron Venus, and then they have a new one out called the Servo, which is depicted here. And so what we can do is actually connect all of these MPPTs into this Servo device. What that is good for is it allows for a centralized monitoring of all of our systems. So that's really good. And we can access that through the Servo. What it also does is allow for shared voltage sense as a system that they have. So one problem that people complain about a lot with MPTs is sometimes one will go into float while the other one is still charging at bulk, and your batteries aren't all the way charged up. And that's super annoying. It happens to us every now and then. And that has to do with the voltage that's being sensed by the MPPT. The Victron devices, when they're connected, share that voltage information, so hopefully that doesn't happen as often, if I've worded that right. So you can see there's a bunch of wires in here that are connected to that Servo device. Then down here we have the bus bars connected up to our inverter charger. We have a Victron Multi-Plus, which does both. It's a battery charger, so it's actually connected to our shore power. And then that flows into these bus bars where it then charges our batteries. But it also provides power to our AC system because it's an inverter. And that's not depicted here, but AC power flows out, and that's how we charge like our computers and, well, primarily our computers and Sophie's hairdryer, which we've all learned to love. And there's a control panel here for that, which we can turn on and off different things. We can turn the inverter off or the battery charger off and set different things. And that's also connected to this Servo, so it gives an idea of what's going on in the entire system. And then obviously all of that from the buses are connected to the batteries. And then over here is our battery shunt. So we talked about at the beginning of the live how a battery monitor is a good way to know how many amps you're using for a given device just by switching them on and off. That's what this does. That's what this shunt does. And this particular one takes readings off the negative side of the system. So it's installed here, and then there's a data cable that runs up to the battery monitoring screen, if you will. So that's primarily our system. Now the last bit that we just installed is a high output alternator. And this one's a pretty unique one, and there's a lot of wires that you wouldn't see here. But what this is and we're going to have this in our video, so I'm not going to get so in depth into it, but this alternator has an external rectifier on it, and it's from a company called Mark Gracer. Mark makes these alternators, and the rectifier is in this white box that you see up here. And the rectifier is the thing that turns the AC power, the AC current from the alternator into DC, so we can use that in our batteries. So this big alternator is on the engine, and we put this external rectifier out there, and the reason we have it out is to reduce the heat in the system. And then all that flows to the batteries. The other thing that we have on here is a regulator, and it's really important to have a good regulator with your alternator, especially if you have lithium batteries. And that's because lithium batteries have the ability to suck in so much current, whereas lead acids don't, that you can fry your alternator if you don't have a specific way to protect it or a specific charging regulator in the system. Now, what this, our alternator that we installed on Polar Seal produces 180 amps. That's the maximum it can do. It will never do that, but let's say it does 150. The cutoff that I personally have for our batteries for charging is 150 amps. So if we have the motor on for during the daytime, while there's sun coming into our solar panels, we have the potential to actually be putting in more current than I want to our system. And what's great about the regulator that we put on Polar Seal is that we can actually limit that. So I can tell our regulator that we only want 150 amps going into our system. And a bunch of these wires that I have connected down here from the regulator are able to sense that. They're able to sense the voltage and able to also sense the current. So if it sees, oh, there's already 50 amps of current coming into your system, I'm going to back off. So it's only going to produce 100 amps out of that alternator. And for me, that's really cool. It's a great safety feature to have on board the boat. It will also shut itself off if it notices that the voltage is above a threshold or below a threshold, which is also just another added safety feature. So without it communicating to the BMS, which it can do, without some type of direct communication like a CAN bus, it's still able to tell if there's a system problem and be able to shut itself down. So that kind of protects the alternator and protects the system. So that's that bit. That was a very brief explanation of that. And then to charge our starter battery and our bow thruster batteries, those batteries are still lead acid. They're not lithium batteries, so they don't charge on the same profile. So what I've done is actually bought a Victron Orion, Smart Orion battery to battery charger. So it's just a 12 volt charger to 12 volt charger. And what's great about this particular one, the Smart Orion, is that you can actually set a charge profile for it. So it takes current from the batteries, from the lithium batteries, and it will, I can build a charge profile for my lead acid batteries. So it's a really small one, and it just provides a charge into those at the profile that I want for those lead acid batteries. So that, if you followed our videos, you'll know that when I installed our lithium batteries a year and a half ago, that's not how I had them connected originally. I actually had the alternator charging the starter battery, and then I had a battery to battery charger charging the lithiums, but I've switched that now. And part of that is because I have access to this really good regulator. And another reason was that the battery to battery charger that we had for the lithiums was producing so much heat in the battery box that it was just getting a bit unmanageable. So we've gone with a smaller one for smaller batteries, and it's worked out pretty good.
Yep. Jimmy asked, 180 amp alternator is pretty high output for the size of engine on a 40-foot boat. That's correct. How many horsepower? 40 horsepower we have?
Yeah, that's okay.
How many horsepower is your engine, and do you have a turbo installed?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our engine is 40 horsepower, and he's absolutely right. It's a very big alternator for a very small engine. We actually had to put a serpentine belt on it and put some bigger pulleys on. We do have the ability to essentially shut off the field current for that alternator. When the alternator is on and running full steam, it pulls about 6 horsepower off the motor. We can shut that off and get a little bit more horsepower back into our propeller. So we have a little bit of a switch that we can do that with. But yeah, it's I would like to have a little bit bigger engine to have this, but it's all works. We can still cruise about 5 knots with it running in the propeller. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Anything else?
Yeah, we have a few.
Okay.
Do those batteries have external access to the individual cells to check voltage for balance/internal resistance?
That's a great question. The batteries that we currently have, and I say currently, because there are some new ones on the way for Dakota Lithium, do not have a capability for you to check that. But the internal BMS does have a cell balancer. That's part of its job, is to balance the cells. So you as a person don't need to worry about that. BMS will take care of it. So there are batteries that do have the ability to do that. But again, there's not much even if you're looking at it and you see, well, these aren't balanced, there's not much you can do about it. You need to leave that up for the BMS. So in the future, we'll have that capability. It's coming very soon. Some batteries already have it. But generally, I don't notice that I don't have it on our boat. It's not what I care about. I care about the total system voltage and the current going in and out of the system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Emilia wanted to know if I'm not wrong, you used the 100 amp hour battery, while Dakota has 170, which comparing the cost is cheaper. Is there a reason other than space?
So we have 100. Yeah, absolutely right. We have 170 amp hour on the boat, but we do sell 100 amp hours. There's no reason why we went with 170 other than the fact that when we got them, that was the only model that we made. So I would actually prefer to have the 100 models, and part of that has to do with the BMSs and their ability to charge and discharge in terms of current. So if we take 700 amp hour batteries, I'm able to charge with a little bit more current than with the 170s in parallel. And that's just an issue with the BMSs, but no reason really.
We were early adopters.
We were early adopters, and you pay that price sometimes.
Well, I mean, it's not that we were early adopters. It's that Dakota Lithium was developing those batteries, and we were mostly testing them.
Yeah.
So and they work great. They were amazing.
Yeah.
Good test.
Yeah, they've been great. Yeah, they really have. Okay.
Yep. Someone asked, does Victron have a MPPT that works well for wind? I'd like to have a fully integrated system on my boat. It's an Oceanis 381, nice boat. And he has 2 nice, quiet wind generators that he doesn't want to get rid of. Good for you.
So I see this question pop up a lot with on the forums if you can use their MPPTs as wind generators. And the answer that I commonly see is no, you can't. And that comes from Victron. So as far as I'm aware, they're not making one that does that. And I can't provide you anything else because I don't work for them or with them really. So, but we can see if we can find an answer for you. But no, the MPPTs will not, as far as I'm aware, work for that purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Dutch Globetrotter asked if you know, I mean, he knows that you have your own battery company, but do you know Battleborn?
Yeah, I know Battleborn. No, they produce good batteries as well. So, and they're very popular with cruisers. And I would say Battleborn and Dakota are probably the big ones that are kind of out there right now.
Oh, yeah?
So, yeah.
Did you become...
I've never used Battleborn, so I can't say if they're good or bad.
You became a big one?
I can't say if it's good or bad, but buy Dakota. Buy Dakota. Yeah. Anything else?
That's it.
That's all the questions.
Wait. Ryan, could you talk a little about wire gauge sizing for loads? Ooh.
This is a good one. I should have put the wire gauge size in, and maybe if we do another one of these electrical lives, if you guys have more questions that you want like more detailed answers on. So an example that could be like MPPTs and the differences, or wire gauging too. We can do like more in-depth sections on that. But send us those questions if you want to see that. But wire sizing is super important, especially on DC systems. So for our Dakotas, in fact, one of the resources I use the most, and we can put a link to this resource underneath the video when we publish it on YouTube, but Blue Sea Systems and their resource page has a really good chart for helping you pick wire size. So what you need to know is how long is the wire circuit going to be. So that's from positive end to the device and then all the way back to the negative end. So it's not just one way, it's both ways. So you need to know the length of that cable, and you need to know the current that you want going through that cable. And then based on that, it will give you a wire size. So for our batteries, and now I have to think because the US uses AGM, or they use the gauge gauge size, and Europe uses millimeter squared. So for our batteries, we run typically 70 mil squared, and that's I think 00 wire size. So it's quite thick. And why this is so important is because if you don't have the wire size correct, you can either get a big voltage drop, so your device will not work, or you get a lot of heat in the line because the resistance is going to build up. And we know we had that happen when we had a bad crimp. It wasn't dealing with wire size, but it's really important. So with all of my charging systems, I typically oversize the wires. I've oversized our entire system so that we reduce the risk of overheating the lines or having a large voltage drop in the system. And that can be a big issue with solar. I see a lot of issues pop up on the Facebook groups. I think there's a solar on boat Facebook group. And a lot of times people have issues with not getting enough power, their MPPT's not working right. And that's a lot of times it's because the wire size coming from the panels to the MPPTs is too small, or from the MPPTs to the batteries is too small. So there's a great resource. You can check it out, but it is really important that you have the right wire size and that the crimps are correct. Yeah?
Yep.
Anything else?
No, I think that, no. Someone asked, Perrin asked a little earlier, a more general question is it more optimal to use battery voltage for most equipment like water maker, AC and other equipment that is also available in 220 volts?
Can you read that question one more
I think
time?
that the question is if it's more efficient for batteries to run big appliances on 220 volts.
Okay. This is a good question.
I'm not quite sure.
No, so I think there's probably a few assumptions I'll make on this. So, question is, I think, is it more efficient to run the devices on 12 volt or run them through an inverter on a 220 volt system? And well, everyone's going to have a view on this. My view is it's better to just run it on the 12 volt system if you can, because there isn't a lot of efficiency loss when you go through an inverter, but there is some, and you have more cables you're running through, and it's just another device that can fail in the system. So for instance, our water maker, I left it on 12 for a reason and just simplified the system. Now, if we wanted to have a bigger water maker, there's limits to those 12 volt motors. So then we would have to move to a 220 system. And it's going to be the same with a lot of other devices. Like the induction cooktop, it's just not going to work DC. So AC, and then the hair dryer, like a lot of these household appliances. But there are other appliances that come with AC plugs, and most electronics run on DC. You have a little inverter in that plug that you use. So we'll just cut the cables and put a fuse on it and tie it into the system. So yeah, I typically go 12 volt when I can. It just keeps things simple. And I really hope that that's what he was asking. So anything else? We're going on about an hour and 45,
yeah,
and we can go longer, but then it's going to get really technical, and then it's...
Yes, I think that we're going to wrap up pretty soon. If you guys have more questions, just drop them in quickly. Frank asked, does the battery monitor actually monitors the battery state of charge, or just measures the battery in, out, and calculate the state of charge from a known start point?
Yes. Good question. So I can actually give you a scenario where this backfired on us. So what the battery monitor does, the Victron monitor does, is it will monitor voltage, which is just a constant thing. We always can tell what the voltage is of the battery. But to measure current or state of charge, which is like 100% down to 0, it needs to know how many, what is available in your battery bank. So it knows that the Polar CO battery bank has 680 amp hours of current available. It also knows that they're lithium batteries, and there's a few other technical details built into that. So what it does, that shunt does that I showed you on the diagram, is it counts how many amps are going in and how many amps are going out of the system. And then based on that, it calculates a state of charge. So it only works as if we have a known starting point where we know the batteries are topped up at 100% and we know how big the battery bank is. So, and then every once in a while, what it will do is once it knows through voltage that the battery bank is topped up, it will reset itself. So if you're plugging into shore power a lot, this isn't a problem because maybe after 2 weeks you plug in a marina and you charge it up, and the system will know that and it will reset. It will reset at 100% and the max. When we were on anchor for 3 months in St. Martin and I was screwing around with our alternator install, I had to disconnect our shunt one day, which reset our entire system, and I didn't know what the state of charge was of our batteries. So I just kind of assumed that it was about 70%, but I assumed wrong. So we went a number of weeks. I thought I had charged it up enough using the alternator. I hadn't, and then we had a couple days we were really using a lot of power. I think we were running the water maker a really long time just to get water full in the tanks before we left. And we woke up in the middle of the night with an alarm going off that the voltage was at like 11.4.
Oh my God, I remember that.
With lithium, that's really low. I mean, that's low with any battery. So I got up and we were in a bit of a worry.
Quite a bit of a freak out, minor freak out going on.
So we ran the engine for a couple hours just to get enough charge in there to get us through the night. And then I think 680 amp hours with a 180 amp alternator and sun still takes like 6 hours to go from empty to full. So that's what we did that day. We charged it all the way up and I reset the system. But that's one of the drawdowns with state of charge if you're relying on that. So you really need to use both. You need to have alarms set on voltage so you know, and then you have to know how often that's resetting. But if you just know the limitations of those battery monitors, that's a really helpful thing for you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hope that helps.
Yes. Aline, and I apologize because she actually asked the question a lot earlier in the chat, heard that charging your lithium batteries below freezing can kill them. Pulling power out will be okay, but charging them will kill them. Is that true? Is it a myth?
I don't know, actually.
I read on your face that you do not have the answer to this question.
That's a good question. We're gonna have to get back on that one.
Yeah, I think that
Stump the chump.
Oh my God!
You stumped the chump.
Bam! Good job, Ali.
A cookie for you.
All right, I think that we have some more questions. What about higher DC voltage, 24 or 48 volt? Noticing appliances starting to show up that run on 48 volt DC.
Really, I've never seen any 48 volts. The reason on bigger boats that you'll go to 24 volts is because of the length of the boat. So if we're on a 60-foot boat on a 12 volt system and our batteries are at the back of the boat and we're trying to power the windlass at the front of the boat, we'd have to have a cable like what you'd see in a metro station, a subway or something. It'd be a huge cable. So on those bigger boats, they typically take the voltage up so you can have the cable size go down. That's just how the electricity works. The only place I'm seeing 48 volts in the marine environment right now that I've seen, and I just maybe have missed it, is with electric outboards. So the bigger you get to the bigger electric outboards, or even the inboard motors, you'll see the voltages anywhere from like 48 up to 100 something. And that's just because the more powerful they are, the higher the voltage needs to be. So yeah, on the bigger boats, the 24 volt systems, I think on super yachts, they may even run higher voltage, but I don't think many of us are worried about the super yachts. Maybe not yet. So yeah, keep it simple, but 24 and 12 are kind of standard on the cruising yachts. So yeah.
Okay. So then there was this question that we were keeping for later.
Oh, okay.
What can be done to mitigate damage to boat electronics by lightning strikes?
There's really not a lot you can do. Our boat, the Beneteaus, a lot of them are...
I mean, you built up the momentum for that question.
Yeah, a lot of them,
So much? What the hell? What's going on here?
There's just not much you can do because... so on Polar Seal, the mast is grounded to one of the keel bolts in an effort to, if the mast does get hit, to kind of direct that current somewhere. But the reality of it is, if there's a lightning strike around near the water, we have friends that there was a lightning strike near their boat, not even on the boat, and it fried all of their nav equipment. So there's really not a lot you can do. And that goes the same in a house too. I mean, there's not a lot you can do. Everything needs to be properly grounded and connected right, infused properly. And other than that, there's not really a lot that I know of that you can do for that. So, but on the Beneteaus, I know that they have a grounding line from the mast. It's actually from one of the chain plates and the rigging down to the keel bolt, I believe. So I wish I could have a better answer for you there, but even the books I've read about this, because I was really concerned about it when we left, there's really not much you can do. So, and I've just stopped being concerned about it. So yeah, just when there's lightning, just don't be holding onto the metal rigging, I think. Or or licking an electrical cable.
Wow, thanks for that incredible piece of advice. Unique knowledge.
Mom would be proud.
Expert. Your mom sent us a super chat for dinner.
That was very nice.
All right. Oh, that's funny. That's a good question. Do you have affiliate links for the product in your electric system?
We've been working on. I don't even know if that's up. A year ago.
Really, we
left,
should.
Yeah, we had a bunch of stuff. I was building a web page with all the gear that we use.
Ambition.
It was all the gear that we use and with affiliate links, but I did a lot of work. Did that even get put on?
No.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah, because it was actually pretty good.
Yeah, we should do that. We can definitely do that at some point here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? Should we wrap it up?
Should we wrap it up?
Thanks everybody for watching this week. It's really great. As all of you know, we do these lives. They're a lot of work. And we appreciate you coming on. If you do enjoy them or you feel like you get value out of them, please consider donating either through the super chat or through our website. We have a place under the tab, Join the Crew, and you can donate on PayPal. It just helps us out because we do put a lot of hours into these lives, and it's a little bit of equipment. So we would appreciate that. But we're going to keep going with these. If you have other lives that you'd like to see, technical lives of things that we've learned on our boat and through our journey the last few years, please feel free to email us or send us a message on it. Specifically related to electrical, if we didn't touch on your topic or you want to get more in depth into a piece, please also send us a note and we'll see what we can do and put something together for next time. Yeah?
Yeah. Thanks so much, everyone. It's always really fun to hang out, even though during those tech talks I don't feel like I have.
It's amazing how fast 2 hours goes.
I don't feel like I bring much value, but yeah, it's fun spending time with you.
It sure is.
All right, well, we'll see you. I don't know if it's going to be next week or in 2 weeks. I think that you want it to go every other week, maybe.
Yeah, probably be a few weeks. It gives us time to put it together. It also gives us time to have a weekend.
Yes.
And maybe we go sailing sometime.
Also,
but it gives us time to put it together. So that's why it's great if you have some stuff, we can really put some good material together.
Also, because I now have a new computer, I am finally editing again, and I have a lot of footage that I'm editing. So there's going to be a video coming your way very soon. We're going to go back to the Caribbean, which is fun.
Yeah.
And we'll see you soon.
Yeah. All right, guys.
We have Jules who joined us.
Jules, you're a little late. That's because they probably changed the clocks.
Hi, Jules and Tenny. Jules has adopted kittens. He's got lots of kittens.
All right, guys. Enjoy your Sunday. We appreciate you joining us. I hope you got something out of this. But until next time,
bye-bye.
See you later.